Trying to make news here, you know.
The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to connect you with two members of the Virginia General Assembly, Senator Barbara Favola. Good to see you.
Thank you, Woody. It's a pleasure to be here.
Delegate Rip Sullivan. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning, Woody. Thank you for having me.
I think you're one of the newer members here, so tell us a little bit about your experience so far.
I hasten to add that I'm no longer the junior delegate or member of the General Assembly from the Arlington, Fairfax region. But in any event, this is my third session, sort of 3.5. I came in with some special sessions in the summer of 2014, and it's been great. It's a challenge, but every once in a while we're able to make some incremental progress, and sometimes we play defense, and it's Paul Bear Bryant once said, "Defense wins championships." So I've been glad to be a part of playing some good defense too.
Senator, things are going pretty quickly over on the Senate side, even though committee assignments aren't made until today, as I understand it.
That's correct, and we don't waste any time. We take pride as a body in always finishing our work within the given time frame for the session. So committees have started meeting, and we're rolling right along. The dynamic hasn't changed.
Still 21-19 in terms of the ratio.
Yeah,
of
we
Ds
had
to Rs.
2 special elections, and the power shift remained the same. There was no power shift. The Democrats retained 19 seats, and the Republicans retained 21. So that was disappointing from my perspective, and I would argue probably from the perspectives of many Virginians, balanced government is always a good thing. So be that as it may, we're tackling lots of interesting issues. Some of them will range from the Metro Compact that will affect the Northern Virginia region and the Greater Washington region. We'll be working on, salary increases for state employees. I know the governor's going to continue his new economy agenda. And I personally, as a lawmaker, I'm putting in lots of bills to support families and workforce training. So that sort of lays out the agenda that the Democrats will be moving forward with. And my colleagues are putting in additional bills, as am I, on gun safety, which is very, very popular in the state. And we're going to fight like heck to continue to defend women's rights. And that, when I mean women's rights, I mean women's rights to access safe and legal abortions, to access a range of healthcare services. These clinics need to remain open, and we're going to have to continue to work hard to make sure that happens. So I think it's a really positive agenda for the state. I think the Democrats are going to make incredible headway. I think we're going to have some bipartisan support in some areas. And then in other areas, I think the nature of a gubernatorial race will show its color. Because 2017 is the year that our 3 statewide offices, governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, are on the ballot. So that's going to present a different dynamic.
Great. So what kinds of issues are you working on behalf of your constituents?
So I've been very active since I was first elected in a variety of different areas, most particularly in election-related issues. I've been involved in a bunch in an effort to try to make it easier to vote in Virginia rather than harder. And I'm also deeply involved in the effort to change the way we draw our district lines in Virginia. gerrymandering is a problem nationwide. It's particularly a problem here in Virginia. I've got a bill in this year, for instance, which would amend the Constitution. We'd have to go through the process of amending the Constitution, have the voters vote on it, which I think is the right way to go.
And that requires 2 votes of the General
It does.
Assembly.
We'd have to pass it this year, then again next year, and then it would go to the voters. And the idea is, to squeeze the politics out of how we draw our districts. It's been gerrymandering's been with us for a long time, but given the power of computers, if nothing else, just in terms of how we draw our district lines, it's become an incredibly effective political tool. And too often, lines are drawn to protect a particular incumbent or to create a district that is likely to vote one way or the other. And what happens is the politicians end up picking their voters rather than the voters picking their politicians. So we're hoping to put an end to that. That bill will be coming up, we hope, sometime soon. Frankly, our leadership has asked the Speaker to send it directly to the floor. Too often these things die at 7:30 in the morning in subcommittee without a recorded vote. Our view is that the people of the Commonwealth should see this debate, watch this debate, and are entitled to a recorded vote on the floor of the House of Delegates with respect to this issue. It's an important issue.
Let's talk about some specifics. I know there was a bill that you were pursuing this year that would require training and de-escalation for law enforcement.
Yes, we've had some very unfortunate situations throughout the country where police haven't handled situations perhaps as appropriately as they should have. I know the police put their lives at risk every day protecting us, and I believe I should give them every tool available so they can do their job to the best of their ability. And I also think there's an element now in our society where there's some distrust among those who are being governed with those who are actually influencing power over their lives. And I guess the first point of contact many individuals have with their government is oftentimes contact with a police officer. So the state does provide de-escalation training in its overall curriculum for new officers, and when they do retraining of officers, they have some de-escalation training. My bill would have ensured that the de-escalation training would always remain in the curriculum and would be enhanced. And I was very disappointed. It died on it was a tie vote, so there was bipartisan support for it. I'm not sure exactly why we couldn't get it over the line. I am going to ask that it be reconsidered, which any member can ask a committee chair, and perhaps I'll have an opportunity to better describe the bill and maybe get a more complete airing of the issues, because I'd be very interested to hear why people did not support it.
Now, that committee process and the subcommittee process is critical to any bill. I know last year there was the creation of a transparency caucus, Delegate Mark Levine and Senator Amanda Chase. Apparently that's being augmented this year by a group called Virginia Progress, that to some extent is trying to live stream committee and subcommittee hearings. Do you think that's a good thing?
I do. I think transparency is always a good thing. Voters need to see their representatives in action, and their representatives need to be held accountable for the votes that they take, and that's just the reality of it. And when you have these very controversial or sensitive topics that come up in committee, I think voters have a right to see how their elected representatives voted. And it's high time, because the fact is that a lot of the work gets done in committees or subcommittees. By the time a bill gets to the floor, oftentimes every controversial element has been stripped out of it. The robust debate has already been had, and the bill is pretty milquetoast. And for the most part, we get some bills that are still lively.
Sure.
But I think voters need to see what happens. It's part of the legislative process. It's part of governing. It's part of who we are if we're going to be a government by the people and for the people.
Woody, I was in what's called the P&E committee this morning.
Privileges and elections.
Yes, and looked around for the cameras that the Transparency Caucus and our new friends have been providing, and they can't be everywhere, and unfortunately they
Sure.
were not in P&E this morning. I had 3 bills that were directed at trying to make it easier to vote in Virginia.
Talk to us in detail about
Sure.
those, if
Well,
you
one
will.
of them, for instance, has to do. We all now know that you have to have a picture ID to vote. Well, there's an anomaly in the statute where while you can use a student ID to vote if you go to school in Virginia, you can't if you go to school if it's an out-of-state school. So what's interesting is, in my neck of the woods, of course, we have students who might cross the river and go to school at Georgetown. Someone who goes to Georgetown can't use his or her ID to vote. Someone who goes to Marymount can. I have a constituent who works at Georgetown as a professor. He's allowed to use his faculty ID to vote. But his daughter, who's a student at Georgetown, can't use her Georgetown ID to vote. And I saw someone this year have to leave the polls. She went in, they wouldn't let her vote because she went to Southern Methodist University in Texas. So I tried to sort of fix that. That went down on a non-recorded vote, no cameras. It's called a PBI, passed by indefinitely. Similarly, the statute allows people to vote early if they are at home taking care of a family member who's disabled. I simply had a bill that said, well, let's expand that to anyone who's taking care of a disabled person. They obviously can't leave that person's side to go vote on a Tuesday. Not just a family member, but any individual whose job it might be to take care
Sure.
of an elderly or disabled person. That went by on an unrecorded 7:30 a.m. vote, no cameras watching. That's the kind of thing that the voters of Virginia really need to be able to see more of.
Senator Favola, you mentioned women's issues.
Yes.
It's been a passion of yours, obviously, since you've been here and before. Talk to us about specific pieces of legislation dealing with that this year.
That have come up. Well, I've got a bill in that will remove what we call the trap language. As you know, several years ago, Virginia passed a law that essentially said these clinics that provide a range of healthcare services but might also provide abortion services must meet the physical requirements of a hospital. So their hallways have to be a certain size.
Right.
They have to have so many, water fountains. They have to have so many parking carrels. All of these physical requirements had nothing to do with the quality of the health care being provided. And in fact, there was a case taken, it was a Texas case, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, Whole Health versus Hellerstedt, and the Supreme Court ruled that, in effect, these medically unnecessary requirements were really violating a woman's constitutionally protected right to access an abortion. And so we need to remove that statute from our books. We have a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, and I'm trying to bring us into conformance with that ruling. On the other side, there's a bill that was submitted that would ban all abortions, period, after 20 weeks. There are bills that do all kinds of things.
Well, we still have the
Yeah.
ultrasound legislation.
We have
I
the
assume
ultrasound
there's going to be an attempt to continue to
go-
repeal that.
There's going to be an attempt. Yeah, we call that informed consent. A woman should be able to say, I don't need any additional information. I have been given enough information. I don't need additional information if it is medically unnecessary. And all of the stuff that we passed on that, requiring that a woman have it was one time a transvaginal probe. It's now been moved to just a sort of sonogram kind of thing. But the intent was to demean and really demean and put a woman in a very difficult situation. Again, not a medically necessary
Right.
kind of thing, but something that was passing judgment on what a woman had a right to do. And we really believe those decisions are personal, they're private. They should be made between a woman and her doctor, and lawmakers should not be interfering. The last thing a woman wants is some male lawmaker in Richmond telling her how to make her health care decisions. So, so those are the kinds of debates we're going to be having. You know, we'll on the positive side, we're putting a bill in that would allow a woman to access contraceptive care or contraceptive pills for 12 months if a doctor agrees that that's an appropriate course of action, because you're more apt to have regular use of a contraceptive if you have a 12-month supply. So we're really working at trying to keep Virginia healthy, and it's important. I put in a bill requiring a study on paid family leave. My study language didn't pass, but the committee agreed to send a letter to the Secretary of Commerce and Labor. So we could look at what the framework would be if we were to require that employers in the state provide some type of paid family leave. Could we pay for it through a payroll tax? Could we maybe limit the amount of leave so it becomes affordable for smaller employers? What size employers would be covered? Those were the kinds of questions, but there's incredible interest out there in having paid family leave. And we even have studies that show women are more apt to do breastfeeding, their babies are more apt to get baby well checks, their babies are more apt to be vaccinated when they're home with their children. And men take family leave as well. I mean, this would be for both genders, and oftentimes you may have a sick parent you have to deal with. So this is an issue that provides a safety net for our families, and Virginia needs to move forward on it.
You know, if I could add, Woody, you know, we had hoped, if you saw the governor's speech to open the session, we had hoped and continued to hope this session is going to be about issues like economic security issues, like the senator is talking about, and we've laid out an entire agenda that deals with people's concerns about their economic security and opportunity.
Right.
And you know, we think Virginians need a raise, for instance. But I'll tell you, one of the very first bills I'm going to get a chance to vote on either today or tomorrow, I think, sort of continues these culture war issues. There's a bill where we're going to be asked to declare January 22nd of every year in Virginia a day of tears. That happens to be the date that the Supreme Court decided the Roe v. Wade decision many, many years ago, which, by the way, not only makes a comment about that day, as it once called the Day of Tears, but implicitly condemns an entire generation of women who have availed themselves of this constitutional right. We don't think that's the way to kick off a General Assembly session. We'd rather be focusing on the economy and jobs, fairness, giving people opportunities, addressing workforce training, addressing people's concerns about economic security.
You're also going to have an opportunity to vote potentially on the bathroom bill as well, which is not good for the economy of the state.
Well, we've all seen what happened to North Carolina when they passed essentially the same bill that Delegate Marshall has suggested be passed here. Big corporations all said they wouldn't do business. The NCAA moved tournaments, and frankly, the worst thing possible from my perspective, Bruce Springsteen said he wouldn't sing in North Carolina. We got to bring Bruce back to the Commonwealth of Virginia. So hopefully that'll never see the light of day.
And the governor says that when he's recruiting businesses to move to Virginia, the first question they ask is, are you guys going to end up looking like North Carolina? Will you have a bathroom bill? And the governor has to assure him he will veto the bill, and the General Assembly will uphold his veto. So, you know, a good good economic environment that is robust and will attract the best and the brightest, the creative class, our young people, and people of all talents. They're looking for an environment that's welcoming, that is egalitarian, that treats everybody with respect, our LGBTQ friends and neighbors, that does not demean women, and doesn't go down the path of having silly bills like the bathroom bill. That's not where today's employers want to live or work or establish a presence, and we just have to keep that in mind.
Finance committee that you're on, I believe you have...
Interesting committee.
Yes, I'm sure it is. I believe you have a bill dealing with a tax credit, the historic preservation tax credit.
I do, that's correct. This is a bill that the governor has asked that I put in. You know, we have a bit of a budget crunch here in Virginia, and you know, the finance committee's been looking for years pretty hard at tax credits. and whether they work or not. This actually happens to be a tax credit that everyone agrees works very, very well. My bill has attracted some attention, and I think in some cases people draw conclusions about it that they shouldn't. We're not doing away with the income tax credit, with the historic preservation tax credit. We're not limiting it in any way. We're simply going to we're going to spread it out over a couple of years, the taxpayers' use of it over a couple of years. So it won't affect the taxpayer at all. It frankly, would help the state's revenue a little bit, particularly in the short term. Let me add on to one other thing Senator Favola had to say about the state's economy. One of the things that's also happening is that businesses are making clear they want to do business, and in some cases will only do business, in a state that is committed to renewable energy and doing a better job in the renewable energy space. One of the things I've been working on since I got here is exactly that, trying to make progress on all sorts of renewable energy, whether it's solar, wind, geothermal. And I'm hopeful that this year we are going to make some progress, particularly in solar. There's been a negotiation going on between sessions, which I think is going to yield some progress there. One of my the issues I'm most passionate about has to do with energy efficiency. In Virginia, we're very protective of our low electricity rates, and well, we should be. But one of the things a lot of people don't know is that while we have very low rates, statistically we have very high bills. And that's because if you have to use a lot of energy, even if it's cheap, you end up spending a lot of money on it. So I've been focusing, and I'm trying to get the General Assembly's focus on improving energy efficiency in Virginia. It's the fastest, best, least expensive way we can get to, for instance, our climate change goals. And I've got a couple bills in this session that will address energy efficiency issues.
Well, what's the state doing itself? The state's the largest landlord, I believe, in the Commonwealth, has a huge fleet of trucks, vans, and so what is the state of Virginia doing?
I think the governor has entered a couple of executive orders having to do with increasing or improving energy efficiency in state-owned buildings, for instance.
I think there's a LEEDS, L-E-A-D-S, requirement for a lot of state buildings as well.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I attended a fascinating conference that the governor put together having to do with how we can improve our commercial stock. It's really, we've got residential and commercial stock. Frankly, our commercial stock needs to do a better job on energy efficiency issues, and we're looking at ways to try to improve that. So there's a lot of activity in that regard, and I'm hopeful that we're going to make some progress this year.
Workforce training.
Workforce training,
yes.
Talk
to us about that.
I put several bills in. Some of our foster youth who go on to community colleges right now only have access to scholarship dollars if they pursue the associate's degree. I put a bill in that will allow folks who want to pursue a trade or a certificate to be able to get scholarships. And that's going to be a popular bill. It passed out of committee actually unanimously. So I was happy about that. I was able to figure out how to do it within existing resources, so that probably helped with its passage. Former welfare moms who are receiving some kind of temporary assistance for needy families. If they're in a certificate program for 24 months, my bill will continue child care services throughout the 24-month period. Our current law ends it at 12 months. So here we would have moms only halfway through their certificate training program. The governor made a commitment to keep higher education whole. So we did not take cuts, or we didn't take significant cuts, let me put it that way, in the higher education budget, because we really want as many people as possible to walk into our universities and our community colleges and pursue their dreams. We just have to make our workforce ready for the 21st century. And we're learning from prospective employers that the jobs of tomorrow really do require, some post high school work.
Sure. I think the governor mentioned in his remarks last week that there are jobs out there even for students with high school degrees and certain training, for example, in the area of cybersecurity.
Yes.
Talk to us about those kinds of opportunities.
He regularly, and he loves to talk about how as a parent And he likes to address the parents in the group about how high paying these jobs are.
Right. I think they were the $80,000 range to start.
To
Yeah.
start, can you imagine? But you know, college is not necessarily for everybody. We spend a lot of time talking about making sure as many kids as want to or are capable of getting off to college, but it's not for everybody, and it's not necessary for everybody. And there are a lot of ways to get good, high-paying jobs through certificate programs and others for someone who wants to take a different route. And our Commonwealth is developing an economy that can employ those people in good-paying jobs, if only we've got the right the right pathways for them to get there.
For several years, I have managed to get budget amendments through to actually fund a dual degree program, and that program is offered while youth are in high school. So they can graduate with a high school degree and a associate's degree if they plan their courses correctly. And I'm getting additional money so we can actually allow them to graduate now with a certificate if that's their desire. So we're catching them right there before they get out of high school and giving them an opportunity. We obviously have to grow that program, we have to nurture it, but we do believe that that's a critical element in helping our workforce grow.
And of course, you've got Northern Virginia Community College that
What a
provides
wonderful
great
asset
service,
to
does
our
it not?
region. Yeah, the community college educates so many individuals, and they really, there's such a diverse population. I mean, folks who are new arrivals to our country, new arrivals to the region, and folks who really have a lot of talent, and they want to contribute. They want to figure out how to contribute to society, and they also want to improve their own skill set, and I think that's great.
And we've got the 2+2 program for people who go to community college who want to matriculate at one of the
And those numbers
institutions
are
of higher
all up,
learning.
Woody, all up of kids starting out at a community college and ending up at, whether it's Virginia Tech, UVA, William & Mary, or any of the other several
Our
great
state
UVA
universities
schools.
have
Yep.
strong partnerships with the community colleges throughout the state. So if a student is doing well, the Northern Virginia Community College, for example, if a student has a 3.5 GPA, that student can seamlessly move over to George Mason without taking any tests or entrance
There are no other requirements.
There are no other
requirements
yeah.
beyond that. So to sum it up, we've got about a minute left, but I want to give both of you an opportunity to tell me what you think will be a successful 2017 session.
We'll pass probably about 1,000 bills this session, and frankly, I don't know what the number will be, but 900 of them will pass, 90 to 10 in my body, 38 to 2 in the senator's body. And we'll get the business of the Commonwealth tends to be run on a bipartisan basis. It's the other stuff that gets the headlines, and we'll have a few of those. We've talked about some of them.
We're going to have to leave it at that.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
Thank you both for being here, Delegates Sullivan and Senator Favola.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Good.